Hi, in this section, we're going to be talking about 3D Max, the basics of 3D Max. First of all, I just opened 3D Max for the first time. This is how it looks like. It has the Welcome to 3D Max page, and then you can go through some of the features that 3D Max will tell you about, how to start working with 3D Max. Okay, if you want this welcome page to open every time you open 3D Max, you just have to keep this checkbox on. In my case, I'm going to uncheck this because I don't want 3D Max to open this welcome page every time I access 3D Max. So I'm going to close this. If you want to access the welcome page again later on, you go to Help, Welcome Screen. And then you can access it if you want to have access to any of the information that are here. In my case, in this session, we're going to go through the basics of 3D Max. 3D Max is divided into 4 areas. The first area, which is the top area, which have the menu bar, like all the softwares. And then it has the main toolbar that has some shortcuts, okay, for the main tools that we're going to be using through Max. We have the undo redo, we have the linking, we have the transformation, we have the snappings, we have the mirror and alignments, layers, we have the materials and rendering options. On the right side, we have the command panel, which is the heart of Max, and it's divided into several areas. The first is called the Create tab. If you want to make sure each of those icons, what is it, before clicking it, just hover over it for 2 seconds or 1 second, and then it will show you the name. For example, this is the Modify tab, this is the Create tab, this is the Modify tab, this is the Hierarchy tab, this is the Motion tab, Display, and Utilities. So first I'm going to go to the Create tab. In the Create tab, I have different options and different sub-options of the creation. I can create geometry, I can create shapes, lights, cameras, helpers, space warps, and systems. In each one of those, for example, geometry, I have a different category of different types of geometry. I have standard geometries or standard primitives. We have the box, cone, sphere, cylinder, tube, and so on. We can go to extended primitives, for example, we have different types of geometries. If we go, for example, doors, we have different types of doors, different types of windows, different types of stairs, dynamic objects, stairs in this case, or let's say AC extended, foliages, wall, railings, and so on. And then if we go to shapes, we have different types of shapes, for example, splines or NURBS or extended splines and so on. If you go to lights, we have different types of light, photometric lights, standard lights, V-Ray lights. Same thing goes for the cameras. Same thing goes for each one of those options. Okay. For example, if I go to create standard primitives, I have access for each one of those. This is all in the Create tab. So if I want to create anything, if I want to create a box, if I want to create a light, a camera, or a helper, or a line, I have to go to the Create tab, and then I have to go to the category I need to go. Whenever I create any object, I have to access the Modify tab to modify this object. For example, if I created a box, and then this box, I want to model it and squash it and make things out of the box and to create, let's say, for example, a car out of this box, we have to go to the Modify tab and then modify it. I have to modify the size, the length, the width, the height, and then I can add modifiers to it, and we're going to go through this later on. We can also access the hierarchy. In the hierarchy, there's the pivot point, which we're going to be discussing for this course. The pivot point is basically the action point, which is the same thing as base point in AutoCAD or anchor point in Adobe softwares. In Max, it's called pivot point. Pivot point is the point of action where the object rotates or scale or move. And then we have the motion tab, which is related to anything about animation. We're going to be discussing the motion tab later on in the course, by the end of the course when we talk about animation. Display tab, which will help us to hide or unhide, for example, by categories, or we can hide and unhide objects or freeze or change the display properties. We're going to go through this later on. And then the last option is basically the utilities, is basically the plugins, softwares that are inside 3D Max that we can be able to help, that will be able to help us later on in the course in 3D Max. We're not going to go through them in this session, but later on there's some options that would really help us to make things easier for us. That's called the command panel. It's a bit huge, but it's really essential, and we're going to be going there every time we're going to be using Max. The third area is basically the area underneath, below. We have the timeline, we have the X, Y, Z of each object, the coordinates where the object stands in space. We have the units and the grid measurements. For example, it says 10 centimeters, so each one of those is 10 by 10. We can change this, we're going to talk about it later on. We have definitely everything related to the animation, to playback options. We have the keys to animate, and we have the navigation part to navigate. And the fourth area is basically the working area. By default, 3D Max opens as 4 windows: the top, front, left, and perspective. Each one of those will make us see the view from left, front, top, and the perspective at the same time. If I want to maximize one of those, all I need to do is just go to this plus sign of each viewport and click on it and go maximize viewport. And then I maximize the perspective, and we can go again and restore the viewport. We can maximize the front and restore it back. Shortcut for those is basically Alt-W. So we can press Alt-W on the keyboard, Alt-W on the keyboard, that make things maximize and minimize faster. How to navigate through 3D Max? First of all, it's always preferable that we have a 3-button mouse, which is a 2-click and a scroll wheel. To navigate in 3D Max, first of all, we have to pan, middle click and drag to pan, scroll in and out to zoom in and out, and Alt middle click to orbit. We can also pan in the front view, top view, left view, and definitely zoom in and out in all these views. But if we want to orbit, it's preferably to orbit only in the perspective, because if I orbit in the left or front or top, it will change this viewport from left to something called orthographic, which is not a big deal, but we can definitely go through it later on. So if I want to maximize and minimize, we can use the Alt-W or just the plus sign. If I want to pan, I have to middle click, scroll in and out to zoom in and out, and Alt middle click to orbit. If for any reason I don't have a 3-button mouse, I have a 2-button mouse, or for example I'm working on a laptop and I don't have an external mouse, and that would happen at certain times, we can use these navigation system that are built in Max. So I have to use now the left click all the time. So left click to zoom in, scroll up and down, pan up and down. Okay, so click and drag up and down. This is called the pan view, so click and drag to pan. And this is called the orbit view, so click and drag to orbit. I'm using the left click all the time. So if you don't have a 3-button mouse, you can use these. Definitely if you have a 3-button mouse, it's easier, so I advise you to have a 3-button mouse. Or for any reason you don't have it and you want to work with these options, you can definitely work with that. And then the third thing we can use navigation, we can use this cube. The cube is here, so I can click on it and drag, so I can orbit my view, and then I can move my view as if I have this view as if it's a cube. So I can rotate this view from right to left to back to top. I can move it horizontally and vertically. I can orbit it horizontally or vertically, and I can definitely click and drag and move it however I want. And when I'm done, I can click on this house here, which is home, and will take me back to the home view, which we started with Max as we start. Great. Now, if we want to change our viewports, we can definitely change our viewport or the order of viewports. By default, this is how they are. So top, front, left, and perspective. If for any reason, if you come from a different background or different software you used to work on, they come in a different way. For example, Maya or anything else. So I can click on the top view on the name, and I can change it from top to bottom to front to back to left to right or to another perspective. It doesn't matter. So let's say I'm gonna put this as a front. So I want to change this to a front. I want to change this to a perspective. I want to change this to the top view, and I want to change this to the left view, or let's say to the right view. It doesn't matter. So now I have changed the order of my views. It doesn't matter. So it's up to you. However you like, you can just change them. You can have more than one top view, for example. I can have two top views. If I'm working and I want to see the object I'm working with, which is maybe a big size, I want to see two top views and maybe a front and a perspective or whatever. So you can change this by clicking on the name and changing it to any of these. Definitely we can change it to a camera or a light, but now we don't have cameras or lights, so I cannot click them. There's nothing inside. Later on, we're going to discuss this when we have lights and cameras. For now, you can change any of these viewports. And the main viewports, you have shortcuts for them that we're going to be using most of the times. So T for top, F for front, L for left, and P for perspective. If I want to change them quickly, so I can press T here, F here, L here, and P here, and I change them back to where we started with. Okay, so this is how we can change the viewports and how we can navigate through 3D Max.